Hi, I'm Helen from Heritage Garden Seeds, and today we are going to sow our Viola seeds. So it is the 18th of September now, so we are in early autumn, and it is now a good time to plant your autumn sown violas, but you can also do it again in the spring. Violas are really great. You can pretty much grow these all year round. And if you have some violas over winter, then it just gives a really lovely, delicate pop of colour in your winter garden. So violas are another thing that is really easy to grow. So I am just going to sow our seeds into this half seed tray. So as you can see, I've filled it with compost. And in a tray of that sort of size, you want to be aiming for about 200, 250 seeds into a tray like this. You can also sow into small pots or into modules. If you're going to sow into small pots, I would just sprinkle a couple of seeds into that pot. Or if you're sowing into modules, then really we want to be aiming for one seed per cell. If you want to sow a couple of seeds, that's fine. And then you can always just prick those out and thin those out. But as I say, I'm going to save space and sow into this half tray to get us started. So like I say, we're going to aim for about 200 to 250 seeds. This packet of this variety has 400 seeds in it, so that's quite an easy one to do. We're just going to sow half the packet. So like I say, I've filled the half tray with compost, and then we'll just lightly scatter onto the surface of the compost. We'll give the seeds a little bit of room around them so that they've got space to grow once they germinate. And then, like I say, this packet had about 400 seeds, so we're looking to do about half the packet. You can obviously do more or less if you prefer. If you're doing more, I would give yourself a bit more growing space and use a second tray. And obviously, if you want to do less, that is absolutely fine as well. So that is the sort of spacing. I hope you can kind of see that. That's what we've aimed for. And then we're just going to lightly cover those with a thin layer of compost. So we don't want to have too much compost over there. And I'm just going to rub that between my fingers as I sprinkle that over, just to make sure there's no clumps. And then just gently pat those down so that the seeds are in contact with that compost, and then give them a light water. So I'm going to grow these under cover in my greenhouse. The temperature, I mean, we're about 20 degrees today, so we're still fine temperature wise. You want to be aiming for about 15 to 20 degrees centigrade, but these will be fine in an unheated greenhouse, which is what I am doing. So once your seeds have germinated and are large enough to handle, we can look to carefully prick those out into their own individual modules. So if you sowed as many seeds as me, that is going to be quite a few module trays, but I love violas, so that is why I've sown so many. I put them everywhere. They're all over. They're really nice in a winter and spring garden. Once they're in those modules, we're going to grow them on, and when they get to about 8 to 10 centimeters tall, that is when we can look to transplant them into their final growing positions. Now, I love to plant my violas into hanging baskets. They're just very elegant and delicate and just give that little pop of colour. So I just really love driving home onto the drive, and I've got my nice hanging baskets on either side of the front window, and yeah, I just love those there. You can also grow them in pots or even in the ground. So the good thing about these is they're kind of dual purpose, because we can enjoy the petals as like an edible flower, or we can just enjoy them looking pretty in the garden, which is why I do like to grow them at home. And then it's just really nice to pop out, grab a little flower or two and pop them into a nice glass of something sparkling. So it's always really fun if you're having a little party or gathering and just pop some edible flowers into your glass of Prosecco or champagne or whatever it is you like to drink. You can also freeze them into ice cubes as well, but they're also very delicious just in salads as like a little pretty garnish. If you're planting your violas into the ground, you want to plant them about 10 to 15 centimetres apart. You can obviously go a little bit closer if you're growing in pots. And then you just want to keep your growing area weed free as they grow. Obviously, keep them well watered, and then just go through periodically and deadhead those spent flowers so that they don't go to seed and put all of their energy into the seed. The more you deadhead the flowers, the more flowers that the plant will produce. So I really hope that you enjoy growing your viola seeds. They're really, really tough little plants. They can bring such a lovely pop of colour into our winter garden, and you can pretty much grow them all year round. And so try and stagger it if you can, and just have them going all season. I try and grow mine all year round, but if you haven't got time to sow your viola seeds in autumn, you can sow them in spring. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to reach out to me. The best way to get in touch with me is on Instagram. We are at Heritage Garden Seeds, or you can also send me an email. The email address is hello@heritagegardenseeds.com.